Welcome to The Married Therapists,
a relationship podcast.
hosted by us, Luis and Amber Semide.
We are married and we're both licensed psychotherapists. In this podcast, you can expect raw conversations about love, conflict, and the gray areas.
If you like what you hear, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. Now let's get to the show.
Last week, we talked about my abusive marriage, so today we're going to talk about Luis's abusive marriage. So, first question is, where did you meet her and how were things in the beginning?
Yeah, so we met on Match. It was June 2020, so everyone had been quarantined for a couple months already. And, I had tried the other dating apps kind of on and off with Tinder and all the other ones, and the options just weren't great. And so I widened my range pretty extensively, and I matched with her, and she lived about 2.5 hours away, and there was a lot of similarities on paper. And so we agreed to start talking, and I tend to be someone who tries to jump the gun pretty quickly. And so I wanted to meet within a few days, and she was like, wait, hold on, let's meet via FaceTime first. And so
I love to call those FaceTime vibe checks.
yeah. Yes. So we did that, which was good, right? It's wise to do that. And it was a little chaotic on her end. She was just kind of all over the place, just trying to find chargers and walking all over her house and stuff. But other than that, it was fine. And it was a good conversation. We talked and saw what each other was about, just to make sure each other is real, right? We're not talking to some crazy person. Well, crazy is subjective, I guess.
Yeah.
But, but later on, she told me that one of the reasons that she wanted to meet on FaceTime was because it looked like I had a lisp, which initially was kind of funny. But then after thinking about it more in retrospect, I was like, one, how do you think someone has a lisp from pictures? Because there were no videos or anything on Match at the time. And two, why would that have mattered?
Yeah,
So
very bizarre and judgmental.
yeah, no, it was. And so anyway, we met on FaceTime. It was fine. We agreed to meet the next week in Austin. It was about the same distance from where we lived. And so we met. And when we first met, I mean, she was attractive physically. And when I picked her up at Zilker Park. And it was just an awkward vibe already. And you know me, when I get awkward, I'm like the shoulder shrugs and, just try to make things light and funny and whatever. So I was kind of doing that, and she wasn't really budging. And so for me, I kind of took that as a challenge. Like, I have to make her comfortable. I have to,
put on a show.
yeah. And I was like, she's feeling uncomfortable. And so I have to do that. And so already I'm kind of trying to meet her needs without really thinking about what I'm feeling in that moment. Beyond that, the first date was fine. We had a good conversation at the restaurant we went to, and we parted ways. And then, yeah, we agreed to meet the next week. And that next week in Austin was when we became official. We became like an official couple. And I had been single for a long time at this point. And so my parents were so excited.
Yeah, they were like, finally.
Yeah, because, my brothers, they got married when they were 21. And I was, already 30 at this point, 31. So they were just like, what's going on with you? And it is what it is. Typical Hispanic parents who also got married young. They were just like, what's going on? And honestly, for me, I didn't really care how old I was necessarily. I was ready to be married, but, I wasn't necessarily in a rush, really.
Yeah.
So
you're waiting for the right one, the right opportunity.
yeah. And so we became official. My parents were excited, all that. And then, it just kind of went from there.
Okay. So we're dating. And what was one of the first red flags? Now, it doesn't have to be a red flag that you noticed in the moment, but maybe in hindsight, what was the first moment you were like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, her general energy should have been a red flag for me, because there was just like a coldness there. And even at our wedding, people that knew her before, they were like, when we first met you, you were really cold, but through this relationship, we've seen you be a lot more friendly ish. And so, yeah, I think just her coldness should have been alarming. And I know people get nervous sometimes, or people tend to be guarded for different reasons. And so while that doesn't necessarily disqualify someone specifically, but I think just the consistency with which she was cold, I
Mhm,
think should have been a red flag. But I think for me, I just saw it as I just need to make her comfortable. And that's something that I've really worked on in therapy over the last several years
mhm,
is placing responsibility on myself for things that I'm not responsible for,
right,
like someone else's emotions, right? If she's feeling some type of way, that's not, you know. Anyway, so yeah, so I think that was the first maybe red flag that I missed initially. But I think the first red flag that I saw in real time that just really gave me pause was again, she lived 2.5 hours away, and I was gonna drive to see her on the weekends. She has a kid, and so it was just easier for me to travel to see her, see them. And but he wasn't young, like he wasn't in elementary school or anything, so he was a little bit older. But regardless, she has a kid. Funny enough though, his dad lives in San Antonio. And so after the fact, I realized we could have had a conversation about that. It's like, hey, because he comes to see his dad every other weekend. That was a custody agreement or whatever. And so at the time, she was having his dad drive from San Antonio Friday night after work to pick up their son, and then he would drive him back to San Antonio, spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday with him, and then Sunday drive him back up to their house. And so when we started dating and I'm living in San Antonio, logically it would make sense, right? That she would drive him down to San Antonio, take him to his dad's house. We'd spend time in San Antonio and then they'd drive back home together.
mhm,
But that was never a conversation, right? And so just another thing that I missed early on, that and just the idea of the agreement that she and her ex had, the fact that he would drive up every single time. There was no meeting in the middle, there was no like, I'll do one week and you do the next weekend.
mhm,
And I don't know what kind of agreement they had and if that was something that they decided and for whatever reason, what rationale it was, but
mhm.
logically it just didn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me now. And again, another red flag that I just missed that really pointed to a little bit of selfishness on her part. But
Right, because 'cause she's got both of these guys driving from San Antonio to her.
right.
For you, obviously, it was every week, and then for
Yeah.
him, it was whatever that frequency was,
Yeah.
and in hindsight, you're looking back and saying, "Okay, wow, she wasn't lifting a finger."
Yeah.
Now, of course, it makes sense if certain things were going on and she really just couldn't do it, but it
Yeah.
seemed like she just immediately put that on you guys and
Yeah.
didn't expect anything less. Like, why
Yeah.
would I ever drive down there when you can just come up here?
Right.
I'm the one with the kid. I'm the one who's got a lot more going on. You two are single, so what's the problem?
Actually, he wasn't single. He was remarried and had kids from that marriage. So he had several kids and another wife.
I
And
totally
so
forgot that.
yeah, yeah. So he had a whole family. And so that just kind of makes things even
Yeah,
more
that
difficult
makes
for him. Anyway, those were some early red flags that I just missed. I think because I was excited. Again, I hadn't been in a relationship in a long time, and so I was just excited. And oftentimes, in the beginning of relationships, you tend to miss some of those things. And so, I think if I could go back, I would really just take each day and just assess things and really be more direct with myself and more objective. Like, what is an objective good thing and what is an objective kind of a weird thing, right? Or at
Mhm.
least question some more things, right? And so that was how that started and just went from there.
Okay. And then tell me about her treatment towards you during this time. You guys are dating. I would assume at some point you fell in love. So, what
Yeah.
was the feeling that you had when you were with her?
So when I was with her, it was weekend vibes all the time because we're long distance. And so every time that we would see each other, it was just on the weekends and I would plan the dates. And I would pay for the dates. There was never really a conversation about going half and half or her paying for some of it, me paying for some of it. Now, at this time, she had a full-time job. She was making decent money. I was in grad school at the time still, and I was in internships and I was driving for Uber, mainly because of the flexibility it offered because grad school, unpaid internships, that's a whole different conversation. That's ridiculous. But so that was my situation, right? I'm driving for Uber and Uber Eats at the time because COVID and all that, it wasn't giving passengers rides. But yeah, so I didn't have a lot of money necessarily, and she knew this. She knew what I did and things like that, and she was okay with it because she dated me. but the expectation was that you would pay for everything still. And so that was that. And another red flag, this is the red flag I noticed really in real time was, again, I was there on the weekends and I would stay the night a couple times. A lot of times I would stay at my mom's house because she lived fairly close to her. But a few weeks into us dating, and this blows my mind every time when I think about it, she said, "Hey, since you're here for a couple days every week, can you help out with the grocery bill and the electricity bill and the water bill? Because when you're here, you're using things." And I'm just like, "What?"
That
Uh,
is so bizarre.
yeah. So essentially, recap. So I am driving up there 2.5 hours with my gas, and that I'm essentially paying to see her, paying part of the bills and paying for the dates that we are doing.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot on me
Right.
to.
It's definitely a huge power imbalance.
Yeah. And what was crazy, and again, this is something that I recognize it in real time, but I didn't address it enough. I did address it, but not enough. So when I would get there, again, we're texting all week, sending all the gifts and lovey dovey, whatever. I would get to her house probably 9 o'clock in the morning or so. And I would tell her, "Hey, I'll be there in 20 minutes, whatever." She's like, "Okay, the door will be open." I'm like, "Cool." So I get there, right? Excited to see her. It's a new relationship, whatever. I go inside and I, I'm like, "Hello." And so she might be on the couch, just watching TV, might be in her room, just in her bed. And I'm just like, "Hey, I'm here." And she's just like, "Hi." Just like very, again, just like very
Yeah.
cold, very just like,
She didn't seem like she was happy to see you.
yeah, it's very weird. And I'm just like, I felt like an inconvenience,
Yeah.
like, sorry, I'm ruining your weekend, but I'm your boyfriend and I want to see you.
Yeah. She's like, "Wait, this is the best part of the show. Be quiet.
Yeah, it was very, very,
Stop interrupting."
it was bizarre. Yeah. And I remember addressing it with her. I'm like, "Hey, whenever I come to your house and you don't acknowledge me being there, like, I feel like disappointed." And she was like, "I don't wanna be, like, waiting hand and foot for you." Like, she took it as, I think the way she interpreted it was that I want her to be dolled up, coming to the door, greeting me with a kiss and a meal or something. I have no idea how she interpreted it, but
You
that's
wanted a very basic, normal
yeah,
acknowledgement
right.
of your presence. You wanted the bare minimum, and
Yeah.
she was thinking that you wanted other things, which sounds like maybe a projection from some other relationship.
I don't really
Who
know.
knows?
And so what, even from the beginning, what this started to teach me, not necessarily through her words, but just her actions, was that my needs don't matter,
Yeah.
and that it made me more, I guess, fearful to express my needs because when I did, it's met with pushback, it's met with just shutting it down, right? And so,
Yeah. She's very dismissive,
yeah,
very invalidating.
yeah. And, like I already have like a baseline difficulty with expressing my needs. And so when I
Hmm.
do, it is kind of a big deal. And so whenever she would push back and reject those needs being met, it just kind of reinforced what I already felt. And
Right.
so, which I guess caused me to retreat a little bit more
Yeah.
each time.
Like, I cannot take up space in this
Yeah.
relationship because
Yeah.
there's no place for me.
Right. Yeah. And so that's how those first several weeks and those first couple months progressed. And honestly, I don't really know. I think just for me, again, I was in a new relationship and it was exciting. I think part of me just wanted it to work,
Yeah.
and even coming into just thinking about purity culture and just the emphasis that a lot of Christian subcultures place on marriage and courtship and essentially equating being in a relationship to marriage. It's like you date to marry, and so don't get in relationships if you don't plan on marrying this person. And so that was also a factor. And I got along great with her kid. Her kid was awesome. Like he was such a cool kid. And so there's all these things, right, that are at play here. And our families were fairly similar and things like that. But I also noticed whenever she would come with me to visit my family, it was always just kind of like she was always just very standoffish. And, I don't expect everyone to be out there and boisterous and extroverted necessarily if that's not your personality, but it was like she just wanted people to acknowledge her and talk to her, but she would not make an effort to get to know other people.
Right. Like I'm sitting on the couch on my phone,
Yeah.
come up to me and ask me how I'm doing and things like that,
Yeah.
wanting people to do all the things, but you putting forth zero effort
Right.
yourself.
Yeah. And so every time I went to visit people that I knew with her, there was always a part of me, and this is maybe something that I is like a red flag even. I would be thinking, I hope she behaves,
Yes, like
which is like,
don't act up.
yeah. And I mean, she would never act out and get crazy or anything, but it's just like, essentially, please be friendly,
Right.
which again, you shouldn't have to like be thinking that even when you're going to visit people. Anyway,
It's
yeah.
almost like I've witnessed your true self, and so I'm secretly hoping that you don't really show them your true self.
Yeah.
Be on.
Yeah. Be fun, be exciting. Because she did have that part of her personality there too. So I was always just kind of hoping that would show up. And so, but anyway, so
Mhm.
that was that. And just again, more red flags that I'm just missing throughout the time. And one of the things that I agreed to do was when I went to go visit her, she's a single mom and she works a full-time job. So I would take care of things at her house. I would, wash the dishes and I would cook and things like that, which was a nice gesture, I think, on my part. And there were a couple times when she showed some gratitude, like, oh, thank you. But it wasn't super often, honestly. And
Yeah.
so, again, for me, there was this dynamic where I felt like I was always trying to please her and always trying to get that validation because it was so sparse and far and few between. And so, yeah, so there was this theme that started to develop as we progressed. And for me, I was just thinking, this is obviously during dating. I only see her on the weekends, so let me just do it. Little did I know that was going to be the expectation all the time when
Right.
we got married. But I didn't know that, obviously, because I didn't think that that was rational. So that didn't even enter my head that that would be what would happen. But
Okay. That was your place
that was
in
it. Yeah.
in the relationship. Okay, so you guys are gonna move forward and get engaged, get married. So tell me about that season. What happened? How are you feeling? How was the treatment?
Yeah. I mean, I was excited again just because I wanted to be married. When I was going to be a stepdad, like I've always wanted to be a dad. I've always wanted to have a family and things like that. And so all of these things were exciting. And so I proposed fairly quickly. It was like 4 months into us dating that I proposed. Again, we're excited. The first argument I remember having with her was shortly after we got engaged. We were going to take engagement pictures. We found a photographer, all that, and we were talking on the phone, just talking about the shoot. And she was like, "Hey, I don't want you to wear your glasses for the photo shoot." And I'm just like, "What?
It's like
Tell me more about that."
unprovoked.
Yeah. And because at the time, I mean, I love my glasses. Like, I like the way I look in glasses, and I don't have contacts, so like that's it's not an option for me.
Yeah, it's either glasses or your vision is impaired.
Yeah. And so I told her, I was like, I like my glasses. I want to keep them on the photo shoot. And they were like Warby Parkers. They're very cool. Like I really love those glasses. And she's like, no, I don't think they look formal enough. They look too casual. I'm like, what? And I yeah, and I remember really standing on my ground because I didn't want to not wear my glasses because again, I like the way I looked and I wanted to feel comfortable in my own skin and all these things.
As you should.
Right. And she's just like, no, like I don't want. And so we had this like argument, and that was again reinforcing that like my needs don't necessarily matter. It's only her needs that matter at the end of the day. And so yeah, I ended up not wearing my glasses for the photo shoot. In that same conversation, she said, and I also don't want you to wear your glasses for our wedding. And I'm like, why though? It doesn't make any sense. And she's like, it's just not formal. Like you will look crazy up there with glasses on. I'm like, in what world do glasses look crazy?
She's acting like you had googly eye glasses,
I don't, yeah, they were,
like from the dollar store.
yeah, I don't understand. And looking back, I think it was projection because for her, she wore glasses also, but she wore contacts. And so the only time that she wore glasses was when she was going to bed. So I think it was in her mind. these are pajamas. I don't, and so I don't.
Like, for you.
Yeah. So, anyway, it was just a very bizarre thing, and I remember her bringing up some like BS nonsense. She's like, "Eyes are the window to the soul, and on our wedding day, I want to be able to see into your soul." I'm
Oh
like,
my,
I'm not wearing sunglasses.
oh my gosh.
So anyway, so that that was an interesting conversation and argument that we had, and then just some other red flag events that happened that I really should have taken more heed to. After my lease ended in San Antonio, I moved into my mom's house for the last couple months before we got married. Thank you, mom, if you're watching this, for allowing that.
You're the best.
Yeah, because I didn't want to sign a 4-month lease. That sounds crazy. And then again, with Christian culture and all that, I didn't want to live with her if we weren't married. And so there was that too. And she didn't really want that either because she has a son and all that stuff, which makes sense. And my mom lived like an hour ish away from her. And one day when I was at my mom's house, it was early in the morning, like 6:30. She calls me and it was raining. And she was like, "Hey, can you take my son to his bus stop? It's raining and I have to be at work before he needs to be at the bus stop." And I'm thinking, what? Like umbrellas are a thing, right? And it's a very short walk. It's like less than a quarter mile. It's in their neighborhood where he gets picked up on the bus and he was taken to his other school.
And he's old enough
Right.
to where that would be appropriate.
He's not a little kid, like he's old enough. And so I told her, I was like, that doesn't make sense for me to do that, to drive an hour each direction in the rain to take your son 3 minutes away, if that. And she lost it. Like she was just like, "How can I trust you to be there for us when we get married if you can't even do this now? Like, why are we even getting married?" I'm like, "What? Like, where is all this coming from?"
Wow.
Um, and so she ended up having to ask her dad, who lived like 30-ish, 45 minutes away from her. And I think she was embarrassed because she's like, "Oh, I have this man, but he's not taking my son or taking care of us." I'm like, that
Yeah.
anyway. So again, just another thing where she had this unrealistic expectation from me to to do that. And so anyway, that was that, and it just kept progressing from there. So
I want to
yeah.
go back a little bit.
Yeah.
So these things are happening and you still chose to get engaged and
Yeah.
then get married. So sounds like you're saying you had enough
Hmm.
good information, enough um piece to be able to move
Yeah.
forward. But can you speak a little more to that for
Yeah.
maybe people who may not quite understand
Yeah.
why you decided to still do it?
Yeah, so I think for me, I did see some good in her. And then again, there was a kid involved and we got along really well. And so I think for me, just the idea of being in that environment and being able to have that role was really appealing to me, right? And again, I think because there were good times, I was just thinking, okay, it's just stressful right now because we are long distance, but once we're living together, things will be better because we won't have that tension. We won't have that space in between us. And so once that happens, then we'll be okay. And that was just, it was really just hopeful thinking for me. And then again, it was hard for me to justify breaking up just because in my mind, we are already in it. And so it's like, there was a lot of equating dating to marriage at that point.
Mhm.
And so even though I had all of these signs, I was just like, this is part of a relationship. We have to make it work. Relationships aren't easy. This is just a part of it. And so I think all of those things, I didn't want to just call it quits just because things were difficult, even though I wasn't recognizing that the difficulty was really all at my expense. She wasn't really, I want to say not putting in the effort, but she wasn't really sacrificing anything.
Mhm.
And I remember having a conversation of the idea of sacrifice and the idea of relationships require sacrifice on both parts. And she was like, "I don't think that's true." She's like, I don't like sacrifice. I like the word compromise." I'm like,
Well,
I mean,
there's no compromise either.
right.
Whatever word you want to use.
Yeah. So she's like, I don't want to give up things just because I'm getting married. I want to be able to still do them and come up with a compromise. I'm just like, okay, I get that on some level, but is it happening? It's not,
Right.
right?
Let the record reflect
Yeah.
that it's very imbalanced.
Yeah. At this point, it was already. And again, I'm still in grad school in San Antonio. But this again, it's during COVID time, so most things were virtual. But there was an internship that I was in that needed to be in person a couple times a week. And so what I would do, even when we were dating, living, I was living with my mom, I would drive to San Antonio once a week, I think on Wednesdays, and then I would come back on Fridays and then just do that. And that continued whenever we got married. So again, I'm working, doing Uber Eats, DoorDash, all that. I'm in grad school in the evenings couple times a week, and then I'm going to San Antonio for internships. There's a lot on my plate at this point, and new relationships are difficult as they are. And for her, her life really hasn't changed much. She's still living in her house. She still is going to work. All of her routines are all the same. So she's not really changing anything other than allowing me to be in her house.
Right.
And so that's just kind of the dynamic that we're playing with here.
Okay. So fast forward, married now. Did things escalate? Because obviously you guys just were weekend highlight
Yeah.
people and now you're seeing her 24/7. So what happens now?
Yeah. I did want to rewind to one thing that I forgot to mention before we got married that it should have been another. It's like, oh my gosh, this will not work.
Mhm.
Um, we were having a conversation. She was saying whenever you get a job out of grad school, she knew I was going to be a counselor. And I think for her, she thought that was like, ooh, big money. Because, and I'll tell you why, because she said, when you get a job, I want to be able to not work anymore and stay home with kids if we have kids. And I'm like, okay, that, I mean, if we're making enough money, I'm fine with that. And she said, even if we don't have kids, don't expect me to be doing all the cooking and cleaning, and we're still going to be half and half on everything. I'm like, what? Like, if you are at home and you have 0 kids to raise at home,
Because her son was in school.
right?
So we're talking about little ones to take care of during the day.
Yeah, and when he was home, he didn't require a lot. He was in his playing video games. He could make his own whatever. So yeah, so she was just like, yeah, I don't want to work and I don't want to do all the cooking and cleaning, even if we don't have kids. And so I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. And so that became like a whole argument. She's like, I've been working for these last 12 years on my own and I just need a break. And I'm just like,
Like you're my ticket to be able to
yeah.
finally rest.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm sorry that you have been single for this time. And I know it's hard being a single mom, not taking away from that, but that is not my responsibility to give you that break necessarily. And at the end of the day, I'm living there, so I'm helping, and so that is a break because I'm going to be helping out with the kid and all this stuff.
Right.
So anyway, so that was a red flag that I missed. But going into marriage and even just wedding planning, there was a lot that I wanted to do, and like I am creative, love to just like be a part of that process. But she was very controlling in that way, like she just wanted to do all of it. And I remember even my mom wanting to help, but she would kind of shut down everything my mom tried to do too,
Mm,
or just like, oh no, I'll do, and so my mom was like, well, I'm not going to help then either. And she would ask me to do things, then I would do it, and then she would complain about how I did it and just like correct things all the time. And so that was just kind of a theme, also just kind of a lot of criticism with no encouragement, right? So I was either getting nothing or I was getting criticized, which
yeah.
for me as a natural people pleaser, I'm just like, I need to do more, because I grew up just very performance based already. And I told her these things. I told her these are different triggers for me. And she just didn't, she's like, that's not my responsibility. Like
Yeah.
that's on you to do.
Gotta know what to tell you about that.
Yeah. And so, and I had many conversations about it. I'm like, I get a lot of criticism and I'm not getting any encouragement. I don't need you to be stroking my ego all day, every day, but I need something to balance out a lot of the criticism I'm getting
Yeah.
because what I'm hearing is criticism all the time. And so for me, I interpret that as like I'm always doing something wrong.
Right.
Right.
You're not being affirmed
Yeah.
by this person who's your girlfriend and then your fiance and then your wife.
Yeah. And there were just so many things that were just mind-blowing to me that she didn't appreciate or encourage me in or even give me any affirmation. And, like, I was a big brother to big brothers, big sisters for 10 years, and when I had mentioned that, she was, like, kinda taken aback by it. It was, like, a negative thing for her. She's like, "Why would you wanna do that?" I was like, I thought it was a nice thing to do, and
Yeah.
I feel like
And
that's what I would love to do that, and
yeah,
it's.
anyone else would be like, wow, you were a big brother for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's admirable. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Incredible.
and I invited them to our wedding, and we had a very small wedding. I invited them to the wedding. She's like, "Why are you inviting them?" I'm like, "Why would I not invite them? Like, they've been a part of my life for 10 years." Anyway, so that was just another thing, just kinda give a peek into her character and stuff. And then I had a men's group that I went to every week for the last several years at this point, and it was virtual, and she just thought that was a very weird concept, like, that I met with guys and we just, like, talked about stuff. She's like, "Why would you talk to people that you don't really know? That's what family's for."
When you did know them, you knew them for 6, 7 years.
Yeah, and they were a really big part of my life. They were groomsmen in my wedding, not this wedding, but I know ours. And so anyway, so there's a lot of things that normally would be seen as like a good thing that were like seen as demerits on my part. And so again, it's just over these months and over this first year, really, the things that I loved about myself were just being chipped away at. And these things that I thought were good were just all of a sudden not good anymore. And yeah, I had to wrap my mind around what was real anymore, and what was good, what wasn't, and just like having to reframe all these things. And so fast forward, we get married, and again, I was thinking that okay, we're gonna be married, we're gonna split household chores, cooking, all that stuff. And it was not that way. I was still expected to cook and do the dishes. And I asked her, I was like, "Hey, when I cook as a compromise, would you be able to do the dishes?" And she was just like, "You use too many dishes." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I had to do the dishes because I used too many. And she said she didn't like the way I cooked because it was too chaotic and she would get stressed out. So she had to go just be away from the kitchen while I was cooking. I was
Oh
like,
my goodness.
okay.
If it's not one thing, it's another.
Yeah. And she got off work pretty early. She was home by like 4 o'clock and she would just sit on the couch and watch TV. And I will say she had a pretty stressful job. So, I mean, I'm not saying that she didn't deserve some rest. But again, when we're running a household, right? I'm doing a lot also. Like I'm also working full time, more or less, doing DoorDash and all that. And then in grad school and internships, all that stuff. And then I'm also like doing most, if not all of the cooking and washing dishes
The cleaning.
and the cleaning. She would typically take care of the laundry most of the time. But then sometimes she would get upset because she was always doing the laundry. I'm like, but I'm doing so many other things. Like, can you just take one thing, please?
I'm
you
always
know?
doing the cooking. I'm always washing the
Yeah.
dishes.
And then I was watering the yard, the front and the back. So I'm moving the sprinkler every morning, everywhere. And then we had dogs and we had to take the dogs out in the morning. And I made breakfast for all of us each morning and made her son's lunch and her lunch in the mornings. And then, so like my mornings were pretty busy already. And then I go to work and then I come home and I'm just busy. And so I was never really sitting down ever.
Yeah.
Um, and I was just tired. And I would tell her, I'm like, I'm tired. Like I need some assistance with some things. And she's like, I didn't ask you to do those things. You're just doing it on your own. Like essentially, this is your fault that you're doing this. And so I'm like, oh, well, okay. Well, in my mind, what I was thinking was like, you know my schedule. You see what I'm doing. I feel like any rational person would be like, "Hey, do you need help with anything? Like, just sit down. Like, let me take care of that. I know you've been
Right.
busy." Like, just having some basic consideration, but that wasn't in her nature. She's just like, "You're choosing to do it, so that's on you."
Yeah.
Um,
It's just selfish. And to clarify, you treated Uber like a full-time job.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you weren't just doing it here and there. You were doing it. If you didn't have internship and if you didn't have school, you were doing it at least 8 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely on the road all day, doing deliveries at this time, but yeah, just I mean, it was an all day thing,
Right.
and that's how I made money to live on full time and things like that.
Right. So
So
again, if she couldn't really say, I'm working more than you or harder
Yeah.
than you. Of course, you guys are doing different things, but it's still work outside of the
Right.
house that takes a toll on you. And so,
Yeah.
therefore, you should come home and be able to figure out what's going to make the most sense as far as the designation of chores.
Yeah. And then even just financially, she wanted to split everything 50-50 on the bills. Like half of the bills are paid from my income, half the bills are paid from her income. And again, she was making a lot more than I was. And so it's always been my belief that when you get married, your money is the money for the couple, right? And so the money that we make is the money that we have for our family. And so that was what I wanted to do. And that's another argument that we had early on was I wanted to have just a joint bank account and then we can have like a personal account just for like if we wanted to do whatever.
Like fun money.
Yeah, fun money, want to surprise each other for whatever. But she was not about that. She was like, absolutely not. And she would say, like, that's easy for you to say because you make less than I do. I was like, that's not the motivation. What? And so anyway, so it was just kind of like this like power and control. Like she just wants to be able to control these things and but still expecting me to pay half of it, even though I didn't make half of the income in the household. So that was just another kind of sidebar of things.
Yeah.
Um,
So, when did you guys hit like a major blow up to where things went left?
yeah, so I'm running on fumes for months at this point, and I was reaching a breaking point. So again, running on fumes and being criticized and just like working to the bone all the time. Again, still in grad school and all that. Unfortunately, after a month of being married, I attempted to end my life, and I won't go into details of all of that. But I did that, and I called her, and I was out away from the house. I called her, and she was freaking out, obviously. And when she comes to pick me up, she notices that I'm not in the right state of mind, I'll just say that. And so she took me to the hospital, which I'm thankful for. So I stayed in that hospital for a couple days and then was transferred to a crisis stabilization unit for about a week and a half or so. In that week and a half, my mom visited me every single day. And just to like see how I was doing, just to visit me because, I'm there by myself and I just had this really major event happen. Um, and she loves me, And so she was there every day. And my wife at the time never visited me a single day. And for me, again, I was feeling so guilty for like the pain that I caused her. And she didn't tell her son what happened. I think she just said that I was in a car accident or something like that and had to be away for a little bit in the hospital. And, in my mind, I'm rationalizing her not coming to visit me. I was telling myself, oh, I caused her a lot of pain. She's really hurt right now. It's really hard for her to see this. Um, it's a long distance. It was like an hour and a half from her house. And again, she has her kid, but there was one weekend that her kid was not with her. I knew that weekend, so I knew I was expecting her to come visit me, but then she didn't. She never called me either. I would call her and I could just hear this like disappointment in her voice and like this like coldness still. And again, I'm rationalizing. I'm like, I did, a bad thing and I'm like having to repair these things. Um, and so that really changed a lot. And when I came home, my mom drove me to back to the house. Her son was excited to see me, and again, he didn't know what happened. I don't even know if she hugged me when I got home. I think she was doing laundry. She was like folding clothes or something. And my mom noticed. Like my mom is very observant, but she's also very respectful. Like she's like, "This is your marriage. I'm not going to butt in." And she's told me, like after everything, she's like, "I wanted to say so many things when you were
Yeah,
married to her."
I bet.
Yeah, my mom is a G. I love you, mom. But yeah, so in that moment, I think I might have hugged her, but she didn't really hug back or anything. But it was just like very cold. My mom ended up leaving and we're in bed that night. Again, I'm like excited to be home and just trying to figure out what's going on, the dynamic. I'm kind of treading lightly because I notice her mood. And I asked her, I was like, is everything okay? What's going on? She's like, you just came in here like you were just on vacation. I was like, what? Like I'm excited to be here because I missed home. I missed you and I missed, your son. And she's just like, "You can't just come in here like everything's okay." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay," So again, I know it was hard for her. And I do still feel like there should be anyway some compassion, right? Some semblance of like, I'm glad you're okay. But that just wasn't there. And so I interpreted that as I need to make things right with her. And so I get right back into my routine, right? Of like doing all the things at home and going back to grad school. And I remember I think I told my grad school and my internships that I'd gotten in a car accident. And so I was gonna be out for like a week or two. So I got back to things and things were fine for the most part. But yeah, I was just kind of going right back into the life that I had before.
The thing that drove you
Right.
to do that.
Yeah. And I would tell her, I'm like, I need help, like I need some assistance. And she would say, like, every time you work hard, you seem to fall apart. It's like you don't like to work hard. I'm like, I what? Like I am work this is I'm working too hard right now. It's just not realistic. And she would tell me that you don't take initiative, that you act like you're single still, like you're selfish and all these things. And I'm just like, are you in what world? Like, and I'm and I would tell her all these things that I'm doing. She's like, stop saying you do everything. Like you don't do everything. And I'm just trying to
What a
rack in my brain, like, what don't I do?
That's such a crazy mind game.
It is. And it just had me like just believing her because I'm like, I guess it don't. And so let me just keep doing this thing. This is marriage. It's compromise. It's hard work and all these things. And so I'm just like doing these things. And then on the financial side of things, there are hospital bills and there are things that came from that attempt that we had to pay. And I'm under the assumption, wrongfully, that we were going to work together to figure out how we're going to pay for this. She did not have that idea. She's like, you did this, you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well, and continue to pay half the bills and continue to, all these things.
Which you couldn't do.
Which, yeah. And I'm like, I mean, I guess I can work extra, which I was already running on fumes as it was. Luckily, my mom agreed to pay for the first hospital stay, which was like 1,000 something dollars. Um, thank you, mom, for that. And she was pissed, my ex. She was pissed. She was just like, she can't just use her money to clean up your mess, is how she would put it.
Wow.
Um, and I'm like, we cannot pay this. She's helping us out. She knows the situation that we're in. And so she's helping us out. I mean, I still had to pay for the car stuff and the crisis stabilization unit and all that. So she didn't pay for everything, but she's helping us out because she knows we need it. And so she was like, "You're gonna pay her back, though, right?" I'm like, "I wasn't planning on it because that's just not what we do." Like she saw the need, and so she met the need without expectation of return. That's just how she is.
It's a gift.
It's a gift, right? And she's like, "That's not right. You need to pay her back. Like you can't just take her mom's money." I'm like, "She happily gave it to us." She's like, "She didn't. You're just taking advantage of her." I'm like, "Okay, I guess this is a marriage. I have to take my wife's side over my mom's side because I knew my mom. She loves like my mom. Like she's a
Yeah.
very generous person. She would give me the shirt off her back if I needed it, and without expectation of anything in
'Cause she
return."
was being a good mom. That's what moms do.
Yeah, yeah, and I felt so bad that I had to give my mom that money back. Um,
Yeah.
I remember when I told my mom, she was like, "Why are you giving this back?" I was like, it's not right. Like, I want to," and she knew that it wasn't me. She knew that it wasn't me because that's not what we do. And so she's like, "Okay," and so here I am, just like trying to make this money and pay her back and all this stuff. And so that was just more things, and it was just so hard to like break through. Like she was just pissed all the time. My ex, like she was just pissed all the time
Mhm.
after this. And I'm just like trying to make things right, trying to right my wrongs. And I would get frustrated. I'd reach like breaking points again. And granted, I'm so thankful for that crisis stabilization unit because I got some incredible therapy there that was helpful for me. I got some tools and had a safety plan in place. And I had my best friend and my oldest brother as like crisis helpline people. And in the weeks following, I called both of them several times just because I was just reaching my breaking point over and over again. And she just kept getting more and more mad. And I actually did leave once in June. There was a moment I had gone to San Antonio for internship, and I have friends here, and so I met up with a couple of my friends. We go out to eat. Shout out to Dunkin's. Love you guys. We were gonna go out to eat, and I was gonna come back home after that. And she called me while I was with them, and she's like, "Are you on your way?" I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have lunch with my friends first. I'm gonna head up." And she's like, "You don't go to San Antonio for friends. You go there for internship, and you need to come back. Essentially, how dare you?
Be selfish.
Yeah, like dare you be selfish? You're not single anymore. You have a family here. Like, we're struggling over here because you're gone." I'm like, "Yeah, no." Anyway, because you actually have to work now. Um, and so she's like yelling at me on the phone, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh." And I think they knew, like the Duncans, they knew something was going on, but they didn't necessarily. Yeah, so I ate very quickly, and then I left. And the whole way, again, 2.5 hours, I'm just like ruminating over these things, over like what am I walking into? And she, I don't remember if it was this moment. I think at this date, I think this day, she texted me like, don't come back. And I was like, okay, cool. And honestly, a part of me was excited. I was like, I have an out, you know?
R-
And so I went to my mom's house, and I was there for a couple days. And I remember my stepdad talked to me, and he was just like, "Hey man, I have seen what you've been going through. Don't go back." And I said, "Okay, I'll think things through." And so I did. And after a couple days, she was in Austin having lunch with someone, and her car broke down. And so she had texted me. She was like, "Hey, I'm in Austin. My car broke down. Would you be able to pick me up?" And I'm just like, "Ugh, man, I don't want to leave her stranded. You know,
Right.
she
But
is still my wife at the time."
right. But it's hard to make sense of because she just told you don't come home.
Yeah. And so I was like, "Okay, I can pick you up, take you to the shop, or whatever." And so I pick her up, I take her to the shop, and I was like, "Are you hungry?" And so we go have lunch, and they're working on her car and stuff. We talk, and it's awkward still, but it was a good conversation. It was good to see her still, even though all these different dynamics. Um, and I was like, I'll follow you home to make sure you get there okay. And so I followed her home, and then get out of the car, and we're talking, and it's just like so emotional at this point, just because again I see the house, and I see my environment again, and so end up going inside. We have makeup sex, and then I stay. And yeah, so I call my mom like, "Hey, I'm gonna stay up here." We work things out, whatever. We didn't work anything out. We just had sex. And so
Yeah. I think it's interesting though that she needed you.
yeah, yeah.
That's the only reason why. Who knows what would have happened, but it's just such a pattern
Hmm.
of I've got this need, I've got this person who can meet this
Yeah.
need. So let me go ahead and lean into it.
Yeah. And so I came back, and things were actually pretty good for like 2 or 3 weeks. I was like, okay, I see a change. She's helping out with some things. And then it kind of slowly started to go back. And I'm just like,
Right.
like, here we go, And, throughout this time, like, there were many times we had these conversations, we worked things out, and she would do her part for a few days and kind of just go back. And so there was constantly this back and forth. And so again, I see this pattern again. I was like, okay, things are good for these 3 or 4 weeks. Awesome. And then it starts to go back, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? And then I get COVID. I'm out driving, and I start to notice the symptoms, and I text her like, "Hey, I think I might have COVID. I'm gonna go to urgent care to get checked out." So I go to urgent care. Sure enough, I have COVID, and I come home. My body is just aching, like I have fever, all the things. Um, and I tell her like, I'm just gonna go to the guest room, because we had to quarantine and all that stuff. I'm gonna go to the guest room. I'm just gonna rest. I'm like worn out. Everything hurts. And she's like, "Well, that's just convenient." I'm like, "What?" And so I was like, "Okay." So I go to the room. I lay down, and she comes in the room. She's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, we have to clean because you have COVID. Like, we have to clean everything." And I'm like, "I it hurts to move. And she's like, essentially, she's like, you have to get up, don't be a wuss or whatever. So I get up and I'm cleaning and I'm just like literally crying.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Um, I'm literally crying, not just because it hurts physically, but I think just because of the situation I was in. I'm just like, I am in pain. I have COVID and I cannot even get a break then.
Right.
Um, and so I finish up and then I go to the room and just quarantine and I can't go out in the house. So she, the next morning, like brings a cup of coffee to my door and like a Danish she got it from Walmart, like at the packages, which was breakfast, which I'm not picky. Like, that, like, it's fine. And I think she like put some soups on the or she made me soup that next day for lunch. And she put stuff on the counter for me, like whenever they went to work and school. She's like, "Hey, there's stuff on the counter. You can go make stuff yourself when you get out. But make sure you clean everything when you finish." Like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But then after like 2 or 3 days, she was like, I'm I'm not gonna be waiting hand and foot for you anymore. I'm not your slave. I was like,
Oh
oh,
my gosh.
okay, okay.
Like, this is too much work.
Yeah. She's like, "I'm already doing enough since you can't do anything, I have to do everything here now." I'm like,
Penalizing
"Oh."
you because you have COVID.
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh, okay." So then I'm, like, feeling guilty that I have COVID, which is like, "What? I did not choose this life." Um, and my internship supervisor in San Antonio, she heard that I got COVID, and so she was like, "Do you need anything? Like, I can DoorDash you or, Instacart you something." And I was like, "You don't have to do that, it's whatever." But she did it anyway. Um, so we got a delivery to the house with like some soups and some like Gatorade and things like that. And my wife was pissed. She was like, "Why would she do that?" I was like, "Because she's nice. I don't know. And, like, I
Human
didn't ask her to do it. She just did it."
decency,
Yeah,
kindness, and compassion. She just
yeah,
didn't understand that
yeah.
concept.
Any act of kindness was seen as a wrong thing. I'm like, what is going on? Um. Anyway, I recovered, and then I I'm excited to go back. It's so crazy. Like, even after all of these events and these shenanigans, I was still wanting to connect and wanting to be with my wife because I'm like, this is my marriage. Like, I want it to work. And so I go to bed for the first time after being in quarantine. And I was like wanting to cuddle and things. She's like, "I'm not ready for that yet." I was like, "Oh,
Hmm.
okay." And so I ask, "Is everything okay?" And then comes out she's upset that I didn't organize the garage while I was in quarantine.
Oh my goodness. You could never win.
Yeah, and I was like, "I had COVID." She's like, "Yeah, but you were feeling better after a few days. You knew we had to organize the garage. You could have just done that while we were at work and school." I'm like, "I'm sorry. I didn't read your mind. I didn't know that I needed to do that while I was sick." And she's like, "Yeah, because you only think about yourself and you're selfish and all these things." Um,
Mm.
and so that's why she was upset. And so fast forward a few weeks later, we're having this other argument about something in the morning. I think I just didn't make her breakfast or something. I have no idea. And that's the thing too. Like, months before, when I told her I was tired because I was doing these things, she was like, "I didn't ask you to do those things." Anytime I wouldn't do those things, she would get upset. She's like, "You're just doing this on purpose. You just want me to do things. Like, you just want me to do it for you." I'm like, I you told me you didn't ask me to do it, so I didn't do it. And now that you have to do it, you're upset that you have to do it. And so, like, what? Make it make sense. And so I think something like that happened that morning, the few mornings after I was done with quarantine. And she just blew up. It was in the morning, she was taking her kid to school. And she was like, "You haven't brought anything to this marriage. What have you brought? I had this house. I had these two cars. You walk into a really great life. What have you brought to this marriage? You don't do anything right." I mean, I'm just like,
Oh my gosh.
"You're right. Like, I bring nothing to this marriage. Like, I am not worth anything." And so she just like storms out. And I'm just like, I'm gonna leave. I
Yeah,
can't.
that was your breaking
That
point.
was my breaking point. I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. And so as soon as she left, I started like just starting from the front of the house and started throwing things into my mom's SUV that she was letting me borrow, at the time, because I didn't have a car. Which,
And you didn't have a car because your car was totaled.
yeah, my car was totaled from the attempt, and so I didn't have a car, and so I was doing DoorDash, which needs a vehicle, um, but she would not let me use any of her cars. And so anyway, so started from the front of the house and started throwing things, wasn't organizing anything, just throwing things into the back of the SUV. And lo and behold, she forgot something at home. And so I'm maybe halfway done and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What does it look like I'm doing?
Yeah.
I'm leaving." And she's like, "No, you're not." I was like, Yep, I am. I'm done." She's like, "No, stop." And I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna stop." And yeah, and she's petite. She's like 5'4", 115 pounds or something. And she's small. And she like tries to block. I'm like, "I'm not gonna push you. Like, get out of the way. Like, I'm not gonna push you." And she's like, "You're not leaving." And so I just like start walking. Like I had like a bag full of clothes, like and start walking like that. And she's like, "Stop. You're not leaving." I'm like, "I'm leaving." She calls my mom and she's like yelling at my mom. She's like, "You need to tell your son that he can't do this, that he needs to whatever." And my mom's like, "What is going on?" And I'm like, "Mom, I can't do this anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I'm tired, and whatever." And I eventually get that load out and I go to the car. As soon as I leave the garage, she closes the door, locks me out. And I'm like, "I'm not done, but cool." And so I drive to my mom's house. And while I'm driving, she's texting me all of these things, like kind of suicidal ideation type things, like people always leave me, I'm not worth anything, I shouldn't even be here, all these things. And I tell her, I'm like, "You don't do anything stupid. Like, you have a son so that loves you, that cares about you." And she's like, "You don't tell me anything and whatever." And so I call the police and I asked for a welfare check because she has her own mental health history. And so I didn't want her to do anything stupid. So I do that.
Which we're not saying it's stupid
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
obviously you tried.
Right,
And as mental health therapists, we know that people feel like that's their only option
right.
due to the level of pain and suffering they're experiencing.
Yeah, so I didn't mean stupid. I just didn't want her to do anything rash in that moment out of her emotions that would not be reversible, right? And so I called the police. I told them about the text. They're like, "Okay, just send us the texts to this email and we can make that assessment." And so I sent them the texts and they said, "Okay, we'll go over." And that was that. A couple hours later, her mom texts me. She's like, "How dare you call the police on my daughter?" I'm like, "I was concerned for your daughter's safety. I'm sorry for showing concern." She's like, "There was nothing in those texts that warranted them to be there. They got into the house and they threw her against the wall and all these things." I'm like, "I didn't ask them to do any of that. I just said a welfare check. So if they did that, I'm sorry. That sucks and that's really terrible. But that's not on me. I
Right.
was doing what I needed to do to make sure that she's safe." And she's like, "You don't care about her. You wouldn't have left you cared about her." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Bye."
Really?
Um,
It's like you
and
don't even know
so
the half of it.
yeah. Anyway, so I left and it just I remember driving to my mom's house and just feeling this like huge sense of relief, just like I'm finally out of there. I was conflicted though, just because there was a kid involved, right? And he and I got along really well. And so it sucked that I had to leave him too.
Mm.
And so that was really hard for me. But I knew I had to meet my needs in that
Right.
moment because I had spent enough time not meeting my needs and it has led to not great things and it was going to continue. And so I couldn't be there anymore. And so again, I was just like feeling relieved for the most part. Got to my mom's and it didn't stop there. She was texting me like, "You still need to give me money for half of the bills and stuff for the next several months because you can't just leave me high and dry." I'm like, "We're separated." Okay, I and honestly, at this point, I was making pretty dumb decisions just because I wanted it to be done, so I was just like, "Whatever." And so I think I gave her, like, 4 or 5 months worth of half of the bills, just send it to her. And then we had we had planned a trip to Germany to see my brother for Christmas that year, and again, this is in September, and so obviously we're not gonna go, so I had paid for it, I think with student loan money or something. I had paid for it, and so I canceled it, and I got the money back, and she got the email because it was through her United account, and she was like, "How dare you cancel this trip?" I'm like, "We're not going to Germany. Like, what are you talking about?" She's like, "How dare you take money from me and my kid?" I'm like, "It was my money to begin with. Like, what are you talking about?"
Oh my
So
goodness.
anyway, just to like essentially shut her up, I just sent her that money too. So I'm sending her a lot of money at the end of this just because I wanted everything to be done.
Hmm.
And she was like, "I'm gonna file for divorce. I'm not doing this anymore." I'm like,
Great.
"Cool, that's what I wanted." And
Yeah.
so
Let me know when the papers are drawn.
really, yeah. And so she did that. She filed everything, and it was fine. And she was like wanting. She was like, "How you took the blender?" I'm like, "What? The blender was mine. It was a gift from my dad 4 years ago, before I knew you."
She's like, I can't make my smoothies.
Like, how dare you take this blender? I'm like, "This is my blender. What are you talking about?"
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
and I was like, "They're $30 at Walmart. You can go get a new blender if you wanted to."
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so that's how that ended eventually, and I'm so glad I got out. Over the next several months, I just did a lot of healing. Luckily, I mean, I was at my mom's house, and she and stepdad both worked, and so I had a lot of time to myself. And I was still driving for Uber Eats and DoorDash, so I just had a lot of time to myself, just listening to
Yeah.
podcasts, going to different groups and things like that.
And you were done with school at this time.
Not yet. So that was my last semester of grad school still. So I'm
Okay.
still in grad school during all of this, and by the grace of God and all things good, I graduated still um, that December, and so that 2021, I got married, had a suicide attempt, got divorced, and graduated grad school all in 1 year. It was a crazy year. Um,
Oh my gosh. One for the
so
books.
really, really and truly. But I graduated in December of 2021, and then by March, I moved back to San Antonio and really just started rebuilding my life. And so that's pretty much how that
Oh
ended.
my
And
goodness.
yeah, and it really wasn't until much later that I really started to see that that was an abusive relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And my brother told me that he felt so bad for me because he knew like how long I had waited to get married and like, um, that's how it turned out, you know?
Right.
And he doesn't live in Texas. And so he just felt helpless. He was like, I couldn't do anything while we're here.
Wow.
And I told him that he did enough. Like he talked to me on the phone several times and that was really helpful for me. But yeah, like really putting the pieces together and just like seeing like I lost who I was.
Right.
This is not, someone who's like yelling and someone who is constantly trying to please people and just like in shambles all the time.
Hmm.
That's just not who I was. Granted, I had my own mental health history. And so there were moments when that was the case, but it wasn't an everyday thing like it
Hmm.
became in that marriage. And so, yeah, I really started to put the pieces of myself back together and really discover who I am and who I'm not. Because there were so many things that she said about me during the marriage that she was the only, just like your ex, she was the only one who's ever said those things about me, that I was selfish, that I didn't take initiative, that I was not considerate, all these things. And so I started to really believe who I knew myself to be again.
Right. And no one had ever told you that
Yeah, no
before
one
her.
yeah, and I told her that too, and she's like, "They were just lying to you," or,
Yeah.
I'm like, I okay." Um, so I started to realize, okay, this was a really bad situation. Um, that's not where I'm at anymore. It's not where I wanna be ever again, and really ever since then, that really helped me to just know what I'm willing to take, what I'm not willing to take anymore, and I never saw divorce as part of my future ever. And so I think I stayed as long as I did, even just because I didn't want that to be a part of the story.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I had to take care of myself. And
Right.
it really was life or death at that point. And, I had therapy and all that afterwards. And I had been seeing a therapist after I left the crisis stabilization unit as part of the aftercare. And he would even tell me, like during our sessions, he would just ask me, like, do you feel like you are in an environment that is conducive to your healing? And I'd be like, "Yeah, I just need to do better." It was always me, I had to do better, and when I finally left her, I had a session with him the next week, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, so I left." He's like, "Oh, okay, let's talk about that," and he was, like, proud of me and all these things. So the people whose opinions mattered and who had value in my life, those are the ones that were reminding me of who I was again.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry that that happened to you.
Thank you.
Insane. You didn't deserve any of that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I'm so glad you got out and just became a whole other person. Louise 2.0.
Yep. Yeah. And then I met you, and it's just been like such a redeeming relationship for both of us.
Oh, it has been.
Mm,
I love you so much.
I love you too. Uh,
Okay, well,
ugh. Didn't know I was gonna cry today, but here I am.
and we definitely want to remind people that everything he just described was not normal, is not okay. He didn't deserve any of that. It wasn't warranted. Nobody should talk to you that way and treat you that way. We all deserve to be in life giving relationships where we feel safe and secure and the person respects you and you feel the kindness and caring. That's the bare minimum. But for a lot of us, we're not getting that in these certain relationships. And so get out. If
Yeah.
you can, if it's safe, get out or at least start to talk to people about it, develop a plan. There is help available to you. And just like last time, we'll include those resources in the show notes. But we are huge domestic violence advocates because of what we went through. It happens way too often. Millions and millions of people experience it. And obviously, as you could tell, it's not just women. A lot of times we think that it's just women, it's men too.
Yeah.
And it's not okay.
Yeah. And just like in Amber's, abuse isn't always physical, right? A lot of emotional and mental and financial, all kinds of other abuse, right? And so if you see the signs either in yourself, in your own relationship, or in the relationships of someone else that you love and care about, seek help, help those in need, and know that it's not your fault.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next episode.